Welcome back to Propelify. Really excited about today's Better Planet Day. Just heard from Andrew Yang, really inspiring message. Next up, we have a panel on clean energy, the clean energy future, really esteemed panel. Thrilled to welcome Catherine Zamski from Carbon Ventures. She's going to moderate it. Catherine, handing over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And very excited to be here today with this wonderful panel of top professionals in their respective fields. So let me start by introducing myself, and then we'll just jump into the questions. I've been an investor my entire career, most recently focusing on clean energy, renewables, clean tech, and by nature, I've built a company that focuses on technologies that reduce carbon emissions. I'm also advising a fund that's focusing on renewables through project finance investing and venture investing. So a lot of interesting things that are happening in the world now in the energy space. We're in this transition, Industry 4.0, and with this panel, we want to talk about what technologies are currently disrupting energy sector, and how can we transition to this new, more sustainable future. Perhaps we start with Rick and Chris. We have two Chris's here, so I'll have to say Chris H. And we'll start with talking about what most excites you now about the energy sector, and how can we really use the power of energy to build a better future? So sort of a loaded question here. Rick, would you like to jump in?
Okay, I thought Chris was going to go first. I'm sorry. Yes, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, no, happy for Chris to go first.
So I'm Rick Thigpen, and I work for PSEG, which I will refer to as public service today, and I'm involved in corporate citizenship, and it's about the very a question you just asked. Energy, I've discovered.
Introduction, absolutely. Your background, and then answer the question. Thank you.
Oh, I could go further, but okay. So energy touches everybody's life every day. It is a very important part of the quality of life for all of us here and all Americans, really all beyond that. And it's also a very powerful part of our economy. Energy literally drives our economy. And so energy has the ability as a business to touch communities in so many different ways in terms of creating economic opportunity, but also now fighting climate change. It is now a global challenge, and energy is a key part of that fight. So developing clean energy will touch every life, because one thing I'm sure we all agree upon today is that we all want to pass on a healthier planet to our children, and how we generate energy and how we use energy is an important part of that equation. And it can create economic opportunity. We're a big corporation in New Jersey. We hire lots of people, and we have lots of vendors. So we have to be purposeful about corporate value and using it to maximize its impact on the people around us and the communities we serve. And that's a very big challenge for us.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And Chris, if you'd like to make your intro and answer the question, and then we'll move on to Kath and Brian.
Yeah, Catherine, appreciate it. And Rick, good intro comments there. My name is Chris Hart. I'm the President and Managing Director for Atlantic Shores Offshore Wind. It's a 50-50 joint venture between two large energy players, two large global energy players with deep roots in the U.S. EDF is the world's largest electric utility, and Shell is a household name basically on any continent. So happy to be progressing our 183,000 acre lease off New Jersey, and proud to be bringing our power into New Jersey. And that's really what excites me most when I think about the clean energy future. You know, I'm very focused on offshore wind, very focused on our projects, but thinking about even from our project alone, even from our portfolio alone, you know, about a third of the homes in New Jersey can benefit from clean energy. So it's a very large project, very large opportunity. Our project in particular, but offshore wind in general, you know, and that's another thing that excites me about New Jersey in particular, is how really leading the way nationally, and even if you look at it internationally, New Jersey would rank well as a market for offshore wind, and it's one of the reasons why our shareholders are interested. So again, millions of people getting their power from offshore wind, clean power, a new industry, lots of jobs, all pretty exciting things.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Cassie, would you mind talking about your company and introducing yourself? I know you're doing some very interesting things in the energy space.
Of course. So my name is Kathy Hanoun. I'm the co-founder and president of a company called Dandelion Geothermal. And we're taking actually what's a very old technology. So the first patent for a geothermal heating and cooling system was filed in, I think, 1912 in Switzerland. But we're making it, I would say, for the first time, cost effective and affordable for just a typical homeowner. We actually spun out of Alphabet's X Lab in 2017. So we started as part of Alphabet, formerly more known as Google, and now we're an independent startup company. You know, I guess what excites me about energy, it's a really huge question. I think one thing that always inspires me to remember is that when you think about what the world was like in 1900, it's like a lot of whales were killed for whale oil. There was horse manure just littering the streets, which was one of the biggest societal problems at that time. And like women spent all of their time washing clothes and carrying water everywhere. You know, it's just life couldn't be more different than it was. And a lot of that is because of energy and these networks of energy systems that we've put in place that have transformed life just like unimaginably, I think. But of course, as other panelists have mentioned, like lots of downsides to how we do it in terms of climate change. You know, a lot of the fuels we use are poisonous, not good for the environment. So I'm just excited because I think a lot of the ways that we've done things are actually quite outdated at this point, and we have the technologies to make them work much better for society. And now it's just a matter of implementation. And so I think we're going to see that implementation happen very quickly, which we need as a society because it's, you know, it's time sensitive that we figure these things out.
Yeah, we're about to get this planet even hotter, so time to act is now, right? Thanks, Kathy. Brian, talk about yourself a little bit, your current focus and your take on clean energy.
Sure. My name is Brian Sabina. I'm Senior Vice President for Economic Transformation at the NJEDA, or the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. I have the great pleasure and privilege to get to work on strategic sector work for the states and helping to drive a stronger and fairer economy here in New Jersey. And we focus, our team at the EDA focuses on 8 focus sectors that the governor identified in a economic plan back in 2018. And 2 of the 8, so a quarter of our focus sectors, are about clean energy. So we have offshore wind as a standalone effort, and I get the chance to work with folks like Chris and his team, and then the balance of clean energy, so things like geothermal, energy storage, solar, you know, all of those energy efficiency are kind of the balance of clean energy. So we have teams on both. And you know, one of the things that our group does is we look not just next year, what's going to help drive growth in New Jersey, but the next 5 to 15 years. And we've taken a lot of, you know, perspectives on this for the state specifically, and we fundamentally believe that offshore wind and clean energy will drive outsized growth in New Jersey in that time period. And it's really growth across the spectrum. It's growth in investment, it's growth in number of companies, and really importantly, it's growth in number of jobs. And I think as we look at this transition that's happening in clean energy, one, New Jersey is incredibly well positioned to help in this and to drive, be a force in this, because we have a great mixture of pretty highly talented professionals, but also a great mixture of really skilled technicians. And if you look at clean energy and what's happening, there's room in this transition for all of those people, right? We have PhDs who are working on new technology. We have operations folks who are building the next best heat pump. We also have really lots of jobs for technicians who are doing retrofits or, you know, working on wind turbines or installing solar. So it's a win-win-win for us as we look at it moving forward.
Thanks. Yeah, and that's a great segue to the next question about, you know, the exciting projects that you've seen, the exciting technologies that you worked on. Because obviously, New Jersey community, startup community is booming. There are more and more entrepreneurs that are coming out of the innovation labs in New Jersey, and we love to work with these folks, and they're very much down to earth, just like the panel here. So speaking like a true New Yorker. but it's definitely interesting to see how technologies are now moving the energy space forward, right? So there are obviously energy producers, but there are also all these technologies that are emerging and now are improving operations, optimizing the way we use energy, giving us more transparency in terms of how we're able to see our consumption of energy. So all that is becoming more and more transparent and accessible to the end user, and consumer behavior is changing because of that. So if you could name a few interesting projects that you're involved in, or a few technologies that you've seen that really excite you and think will bring us to the future. And perhaps with, we'll start with Chris again and Rick, and followed with Catherine and Brian. Go in the same order. Feel free to jump in and interrupt each other at any point.
Right. I think that means I go first.
Yeah.
So there is no question, as we talked about, the production and delivery of energy to end users is also a huge economic driver. And today we have climate change. And so transitioning from fossil fuels to clean energy really requires innovation. And there's opportunity for the innovation world to play a very meaningful role in changing how we produce and consume energy. And at Public Service, we have a very new, exciting project where innovation could be a part of it, and it's energy efficiency. One of the most important parts of climate change, certainly, is to reduce all of our individual energy consumption. Some of that's about behavior, right? Is there anybody who's listening whose mother hasn't told them to turn out the lights when you leave a room? Simple things like that. But there are also far more sophisticated ways to reduce energy consumption, including smarter appliances. And smart meters is a big deal for the world of utilities in terms of reducing energy consumption. When people understand sometimes how they're wasting energy, ways that they can reduce energy by studying their energy patterns, they are more inclined to reduce their energy usage. So using innovation to help reduce energy usage is a big, big challenge for the future, and making that universally accessible. You should not have to be wealthy to enjoy the benefits of energy efficiency, because energy efficiency is a key part of fighting climate change, and protecting our planet should not depend upon your personal income. So we're very excited about it. And in fact, I'll just say one last thing, Catherine, is that we're working with Tech United on an innovation challenge to help find new ways for us to bring energy efficiency into the homes of the people of New Jersey so they can save energy, do it easily and do it affordably. And it's a major contribution to the fight against climate change. And we're very excited about it. And innovation needs to be our partner in shaping that brighter future.
Wonderful. Thanks. Chris, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. And maybe we can mix it up a little bit. Yeah, sorry.
I'm gonna have individual questions for you as well.
Yeah, no problem. And maybe we can mix it up a little bit. Brian and I can probably tag team on this one a little bit. One of the things that's really interesting is, as far as, technology and kind of the projects that we're working on in the offshore wind space, everything's really, really big in the offshore wind space. The turbines are getting larger, the blades are getting longer. It's 100-meter long blades, football field long blades is kind of the status quo, and you're pushing that envelope even further. Each wind turbine themselves, it's 13 megawatts. It's like thousands of homes with one single turbine, and they're getting heavier and taller. So everything's large, and one of the key ingredients for offshore wind is having a very capable port. And so Brian and his team and the governor and New Jersey really have taken a leadership role in developing the New Jersey wind port. And it's something that the offshore wind industry, Atlantic Shores in particular, is very excited about that port. And so that's maybe you want to go into some more depth there, Brian, on the New Jersey port and some of the capabilities that are being brought forward there. But offshore wind, very, very big, lots of scale. Like I said in my introductory comments, millions of people, and the key driver there really is tech. If you take tech as a broadly defined term, really scaling these individual components, vessels and foundations and all of that. But New Jersey wind port, very exciting to see all that happening.
Yeah, no, Chris, thanks for the tee up on that one. You know, we are just incredibly excited and proud and motivated about the Windport project. It's, you know, on one end of what's happening in clean energy, as you said, this is like the really big, we're going to put in $100 billion of new infrastructure off the US East Coast over the next 15 years as an industry. And we need a way to do that. And we're investing as a state in a brand new port down in Salem County. It will be the largest investment in that part of the state in 50 years. And it's all about clean energy, right? And it happens to be right next to one of PSE&G's nuclear generating facilities, Hope Creek, and they're a great partner in this. So you're seeing kind of companies come together and really supporting, you know, all assets or facets of the clean energy transition. What I'm really excited about is, yes, you know, the state of New Jersey is going to be building a brand new wind port, and it's going to support the industry. But the reason we're doing that is because the industry is evolving so quickly, right? So when we looked 8 years ago, the machines that Chris was talking about were a third the size, right? When you have that much change in technology, it is ripe for innovation, both on materials, when we look at it from operations, when we look at it from how do we actually like install these things and how do we create new processes to manage the logistics. So, you know, by anchoring the supply chain of the customers here in New Jersey, it creates an opportunity for small businesses and entrepreneurs to really get involved in that brand new industry. And I think that's something that we've thought a lot about in terms of innovation and clean energy, is that it's not just, oh, the next new product, right? It's also the next new operating system and the next new service platform and the technology that wraps around some of those new products, which is exciting. The other thing, I want to jump back to what Rick said around energy efficiency for a second, because that is, yeah, it is probably the least sexy, but probably one of the most important parts of our clean energy transition. If you look at New Jersey, we're pretty underweight in terms of how many energy efficiency technicians and retrofitters we have, and we see that as a huge opportunity, create jobs, save energy. It's one of the most efficient ways of doing it. And the innovation there is, yes, of course, about technology and operations, but there's also a lot of financial innovation that happens in that part of the clean energy economy, right? So if we look at who needs energy retrofits, well, if you're a wealthy family, like you probably have already thought about that smart home meter and extra insulation. If you're on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum, there's probably a huge benefit in investing in energy efficiency, but you may not have the capital today to make that investment up front. So looking at the intersection of fintech and clean energy is incredibly exciting for that part of the clean energy economy.
Absolutely.
I think jumping into the clean energy and energy efficiency conversation, I think energy efficiency, people have recognized for so long that it would be great if people just insulated their homes and it would make a huge difference. And for a long time, I mean, still today, it's like been very difficult to get traction on that or have it make a real difference. And I think part of the reason why is that, in my opinion, the best way of innovating, especially for consumer-based energy products, you really have to I actually disagree maybe a little bit that behavior change will play a part in our solution. Because, you know, one thing Pat Brown, who's the founder and CEO of a company called Impossible Foods, says, they make the non-meat hamburger that tastes exactly like a hamburger. He was just like, the way that they succeed is they have to make meat lovers prefer their product over meat, you know? And so his insight was just like, a lot of people have made veggie burgers for a long time. It's going to appeal to this like very tiny niche of the population. But if you're really going to, he's trying to solve climate change by getting rid of animal agriculture, which is responsible for a huge sector of emissions. You just got to make a product that's better. And I think Elon Musk did the same thing with the Tesla. It's like electric cars existed before that. They were kind of compromise cars for people who cared about the environment. They had a lot of drawbacks, but people, if they really cared, bought them. And now people who don't care about the environment want a Tesla because it's a Tesla. It's like, how can we do that with energy efficiency, because the last thing that most people want to think about or spend money on is insulation for their home, just because like no one really thinks about that or wants that really, even though it's financially the right thing to do and a great thing to do. So I'm not arguing with the logic, I'm just talking about consumer behavior. And that is one reason that geothermal attracted me, because geothermal heating and cooling systems are a luxury product. They're very popular in high-end homes, and they're they're the most efficient possible heating and cooling system. So it's one reason that I feel like cracking the cost barrier on geothermal could have such a big impact, because all of a sudden you're actually making a more desirable product accessible, that also is more energy efficient.
Kathy,
Yeah, that's a great.
turn out the lights when you leave the room, though.
Or don't even put them
Don't
on
worry,
at all.
I do most of the time. But wouldn't it be better, for example, like the lights that just automatically turn off when you leave that are in offices? Like that just seems like a better idea to me. You know, it's like, make it foolproof, make it easy, and then it will happen.
Also make it so that every once in a while I don't go like lean back and wave my hands so that my lights.
Yeah, that's true. They could be improved a little bit in that sense. I absolutely agree.
You heard it here, opportunity. The next generation sensing for lights and heat pumps.
Let's do both, you
Technologies
guys.
already exist, right? These technologies are out there that can help you manage your environment better. I think one of the difficult that early entrepreneurs in the sector had is, here I have this wonderful technology and somehow I need to deploy it. And it's not that easy to get the customers to adapt these, right? So how do you really get this type of tech and promote this and get the large customers, right? Energy companies, power companies to get to use them, and how do you get consumers to get to know them? So it's not that easy to do. So maybe Kathy will stay with you for a moment and tell us about how you promoted your tech. How did you convince people to use it? This is the most wonderful thing, and that would be a good advice for all the entrepreneurs out there.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on a very real issue. So we wanted to mainstream geothermal heat pumps, right? And one way we could have approached the problem is to try to build a superior heat pump, but like that would take a lot of capital, a lot of time. And then once you have a really better heat, let's say you do it and you have like a much better heat pump, how do you sell it? Like there's no channel to go through to sell geothermal heating and cooling systems to homeowners. So what we ended up doing is the first year of the company, a year and a half or so, it was all about building the channel. We had to start with, let's figure out how to market geothermal heating and cooling, how to sell it, what is our business model for actually getting it into the home. And only once we had some semblance of an idea of like doing that and that was growing, did we then shift our attention to launching our Dandelion Air heat pump product. And I think the strength of Dandelion now is it grows with our ability to just, you know, as our customer base grows, as our sophistication around the marketing and sales grow, it gives us greater and greater license to invest in improving the technology further and further, because we actually have a sales channel. And in our industry, that's a huge challenge.
Yeah, and you know, Chris, Brian, Rick, you know a lot about policy and collaboration between you know, private and public sector and promoting large projects, right? So some of the largest wind turbine projects in the state. So how does that get done? I'm sure there is a lot of work that gets put into this. What were the roadblocks that you faced, and how did you solve those problems?
Yeah, maybe I'll share a couple comments. You know, if you look back through my career, I've been in this role since October of 2018, and I had roles earlier at the U.S. Department of Energy. I was the head of first offshore wind manager there in Washington, D.C., and I worked at ExxonMobil for a little while. And I've been a champion. There were several of us out there, who were champions for offshore wind for better part of a decade, maybe a decade and a half, and it was very difficult in those early years to get a concept like offshore wind off the ground. You can talk about scale, as I mentioned, that's a big driver. You can talk about proximity to demand, that's a big driver. But there always seemed to be hurdles that were brought up. Very recently, and I think it's pretty exciting. You've seen some developments in the last couple of weeks. You're starting to see major players. Our shareholders, EDF and Shell, have been in the space for a while. Two very big names, as I mentioned. So some of the forefront at some of the forefront of those early activities, early investments. Very exciting. But you're starting to see transition and movement across a broader swath of the industry, and so that's great. I guess one message that comes out of that is refine the messages and be persistent. I probably don't need to say that too much. There's a lot of folks out there that understand the persistency piece, but you are seeing offshore wind in particular really taking off. Tens of thousands of megawatts. Again, millions of people in the U.S., around the world, really moving fast, and a lot of that is because you're seeing the big players in the energy space moving more forcefully, more deliberately into offshore wind. So that persistency from so many people certainly paying off.
And let me jump in and say,
Go ahead, Rick.
Energy is a public-private partnership, and that partnership is frequently very challenging. Chris just talked about offshore wind. There's an Offshore Wind Economic Development Act in New Jersey. There's a New Jersey Clean Energy Act, and there are a series of executive orders making this possible. All of those activities involve a substantial amount of politics and policy and balancing, right? I work for a utility company, an investor-owned utility. And so our investors have expectations. Politicians have voters who have expectations. And having the expectations of investors and voters come together requires conversation. It requires some mutual trust. It requires compromise. And it requires some leadership, probably from the elected side, to drive this forward. Mm-hmm. And so what Chris is talking about is the product of a whole lot of politics. At the core of this politics, to me, is the fact that we are dealing with climate change. And if we don't change, we are going to face the consequences. And those who are looking at the future would prefer not to face those consequences. But everybody knows human nature. So it's going to cost money to do offshore wind. So should I spend the money on offshore wind to fight climate change? Because the costs of climate change are liable to be much higher, but they're not here yet. They're in the future. And in politics, that concrete cost versus the, I'm trying to find the right word, not concrete costs in the future, which could be astronomical, of adapting to the challenges of climate change, really requires some political leadership and some very serious dialogue. And it requires confidence among the people talking to each other, so that the best solutions can come about. So behind the scene is a whole bunch of tough stuff, a lot of elbowing under the boards and lots of compromise to be done in order for us to adopt these policies. But it's absolutely essential, because energy at its core is a public-private partnership, and new technologies like Kathy's require the public sector to embrace them in order for the public to really have broad access to it in a fashion that's affordable.
Yeah, can't live without it. Brian, go ahead.
So I agree with Rick. There is lots of elbowing under the board, and it's a messy process. But at the same time, there has been, certainly over the last few years, if not the last 5 years, just a change in mindset. And I think that there's, folks are just demanding that we get crap done now, right? And I think you're seeing that it's not just from folks who care about the environment. It's from folks all across the country. It's from our political leadership at this point. I think there's a real realization that now is the time, and I think we're really heartened to see a lot of investors and a lot of entrepreneurs hearing that and seeing that, and not just thinking about it as a great thing for the environment and for equity, but also as a great economic opportunity. And look, New Jersey wants to be a leader in this space. We're one of a handful of states that has a massive, utility scale storage goal. We're one of a few states that actually has a data-driven plan to get us to 100% clean energy by 2050. So, yes, there's lots that goes on, but at the end of the day, you just have to commit to it. And I think New Jersey is one of a handful of states who are committing to it hard. And we're putting resources at the big side of things, like, building wind ports, providing solicitations for offshore wind to make that market. We're also doing it on the small side and really thinking about how do we build new tools to make those small entrepreneurs get going, whether that's through new small seed grants, through some R&D voucher systems that help our entrepreneurs get into our academic universities and use those testing and prototyping assets that they want to use, right? So to grow and build their business. So what the Tech United is doing around the Clean Tech Alliance with folks like PSC&G, right? All of this is just people committing to get it done. And at the end of the day, I couldn't be more proud of what we're doing.
And my mother would call that making an economic virtue out of a climate change necessity, the way you just
Amen.
Very nice. So
I'm going to jump in here real quick if I can, Catherine, because I know, new world we got going on in 2020, and normally we'd have Kathy, physically at the event. She wouldn't be able to leave, but now she's a click away from another meeting that she has to go to. So I want to make sure we have a chance to get a little bit more of her time. Kathy, Jim Collins talks about having this big, hairy, audacious goal, a BHAG to go after. You've picked an industry with a massive, audacious goal. And I think what's interesting about this panel is we have representations across the spectrum. I'm wondering what your experience has been. Like, does it require a Google? Does it require a Shell? Do we need these massive partners or Alphabet to enable these things to happen, to get the outsiders in the game?
I think that increasingly it will be possible to do it without a big corporate sponsor. And the reason I say that is it seems like the investment community is shifting. When I started Dandelion, it was very difficult to raise money, even coming out of Google, right? So I was in a strong position coming out of this reputable place. But even so, people are very skittish about clean energy, especially real world clean energy where you have to go to people's homes and do things. I've really seen that change. I think there's a lot more excitement from the investment community around the energy transformation. And if that continues, then I will expect like a lot more entrepreneurs will get the capital they need to get started, which will be great because there's like so many things to do and so many ideas to explore. If it doesn't continue, if we take a step back for some reason, which I don't believe we will, then I do think the large corporate sponsor plays a key role just to keep that capital available to the high risk early stage idea.
I do genuinely think you have support from companies like PSCG, certainly from the EDA. We'd like to see you cross the river and get some geothermal from Dandelion here soon.
I can't wait.
We would love to see that happen. So we're going to keep the panel going. I know you have to go, Kathy, but before you do, this would be a normal place where I'd like sort of make the audience stand up and high five one another. It's super awkward, but they get to meet each other. So before you go, so we don't lose you, we're going to high five the camera on 3. 1, 2, 3. Boom. Oh, and since you have 30 seconds left, and I forgot the most important question, then you can sign off, which is how can the tech community, how can Dandelion, the goal of this event is to build a better future for all. How can we do that?
Yeah, I would say that the better future will just depend on individuals taking personal career risks to go after big, hairy, audacious goals to make our system better. And that can be, starting a company, taking a position within a company, doing a partnership, working in the government. Like there's, as this panel makes so clear, so many key roles to play, but the more committed people take responsibility for climate, the faster we'll figure it out.
Awesome. Well, thanks for going. I'm sorry that you have to leave us. We're going to keep going for a little bit longer with this panel. Thanks, Kathy. Going to Catherine, as an investor in this space. What's that, Rick?
You turn out those lights when you leave.
By the way, it's not just moms. Dads get concerned about the bills also.
Yes.
Catherine, as an investor in this space, what do you look for? Again, the infrastructure required is significant. It's much different than SaaS companies that a lot of our attendees are used to. What do you look for when you invest in this category?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, these technologies are necessary. They're not good to have. They're absolutely must-haves by all. So the first thing I look for is, hey, can this be scaled? can it be actually applied in the real world, or is it just theoretical? So once, yes, and has it been pilot tested by some major player? And once it's pilot tested and verified, then it's time to roll it up, right? And that's when we invite other co-investors and other folks to look at this and promote this everywhere. So that's kind of the pivotal moment for me, is whether the technology is ready, the MVP has been built, whether it has real life application as opposed to theoretical. Because yes, I would love for everyone to focus on this and write dissertations, but time to act is now. So we have to have these applications in real life. And that's why there is a lot of collaboration goes that into promoting these technologies within the customers, especially larger industrial customers.
You know, Chris, there are many industries where it's winner take all, but the energy space is quite different. And I was hoping we'd get to a little maybe friendly competition with you and Kathy before she left. But I mean, how much is your view that it's going to take 100 players, or how much is your view it's win or nothing? You know, do you have a sticker on the back of your car, win or die?
No, absolutely not. Again,
I should have said on the back of your bike, by the way. I apologize, but go ahead.
No, looking back again on my career, spending some time at companies like ExxonMobil and places like that, with shareholders like we have with EDF. EDF has deep American roots, has been operating renewables projects in the U.S. for 35 years, largely wind, solar, and storage, but they also have a significant nuclear footprint in the U.S. and around the world. And Shell, predominantly has made its history in the oil and gas space, although making a significant shift into renewables and green hydrogen, especially in Europe. But there will be a transition period, and the debate comes on the pace of that transition. And the role that oil will play versus the role that gas will play versus nuclear, and there's some nuances in there. But I think it's very difficult. There aren't too many conclusions from reputable organizations that would say that it's not going to take an all of the above strategy for a period of time into the future. And so I think it's great the work that Kathy and her team are doing. Offshore wind in particular, I'm very bullish, obviously, on offshore wind and the scalability of offshore wind. But onshore wind in the U.S. is a raging success story. And solar trajectory and growth curve is really picking up now as well. So there's a lot of great things that are happening. And it really will take a period of time for that transition to happen, but I'm very bullish on the future for clean energy, especially in New Jersey and especially in America. Especially
in New Jersey, Rick. We've gotten to know each other through this engagement on the Clean Tech Challenge, surfacing startups. I know that this concept of working with the startup and the technology community was not as much in the forefront for you. What's something you've seen come into the focus that gives you hope that we're moving in the right direction here, and how technology can play a role?
So technology is very important. So Aaron, partnership, the ability to collaborate plays an important role, right? Wind technology is a new thing. And just in the brief time that Chris is here, right? Chris would not be in New Jersey, but for wind technology to be pursued by New Jersey. And the story is still to be told, but clearly New Jersey is a little bit better off because people like Chris are here because we're doing something new. And the impacts of his presence here are going to go far beyond just his project. Other things will happen. And there's true for a whole host of things. And you're opening my eyes to all kinds of innovators out there. Catherine, maybe we'll get you over to New Jersey too and help make New Jersey a better place, right?
Someday.
Right, and that's about collaboration and making a market that attracts people to come here to do exciting things, right? I said it before, if we don't take action on climate change, we are going to face the consequences. And those consequences are not here today, and they're hard to predict, but they're there. As sure as the sun shines, those consequences are coming if we don't take action. And it's going to take innovation because our lifestyle requires energy and our economy requires energy. So the demand is not going away, but we've got to change how we produce it, and we've got to change how we deliver it. And that is going to be about innovation, and it's going to be about partnership. And Public policy like production tax credits for wind are an essential part of making that partnership happen. The public sector has to be the leader to bring us all together, or we're not going to come together, because it's got to be a public policy to make the transition. We could sit here today in my world and say, fossil fuels remain the cheapest option in the wholesale electric markets. That's a failure of public policy, because we all know we have to reduce our use of fossil fuels, or the threat of climate change is going to get worse. So partnership, public policy, and the ability of us to work together in spite of our differences is something that seems to be forgotten, and is going to be essential for that brighter future. We don't have to agree on politics. We have to agree we all want to make our planet cleaner, and we want to make our future more prosperous together. And that means compromise, no matter how our values or perspectives are, what language you speak when you're, your mother tongue, or what religion you preach. And that's a big challenge for us. And we haven't got it right yet in America, but we are working on it. And I think we're in the right direction, but it's going to be about teamwork. And you've opened my eyes, Aaron, to a world that I didn't even know was out there. And it's humbled me, because I would be less of an executive if I didn't know how to listen and learn from those out there who have things to teach.
Yeah, I think in terms of compromise, great technologies do not require compromise, right? If someone is building wonderful technology, it will be based on efficiencies, right? So it's not just going to be great for the environment, but it's also going to bring efficiencies to the businesses. So, and investors are looking for those technologies that are, that fulfill that, that role. So,
I mean, I think that's a great point. Go ahead, Rick.
No, a little public sector help to get going, maybe. And some
Well, that's what I was going to follow up on your point, Rick, which is that, in reimagining the New Jersey Tech Council, and now as Tech United, we've been looking for areas of differentiated strength. And the reason that we have this Clean Tech Alliance is because we do believe we can create a leg up in the industry by bridging these connections, by building an actual alliance of the various entities required to accelerate this industry. And I should point out what Brian's mentioned, like there's been a significant shift in New Jersey. I've been involved in the tech community for a decade. The governor and the EDA, even if you have disagreements on policy, like they are investing in this industry heavily so that we can have that leg up. And I'm very grateful for that, because I think it gives us a chance to exceed in this capability. So we are a bit out of time, but I want to ask our closing question. I'm going to ask you to keep your answers very short, which might be a challenge. I'll start with you, Catherine, which is, how can we build a better future for all?
keep building better tech.
Short and sweet, I love it. Chris?
Millions of people getting their power from offshore wind.
Sorry, Kathy, you can't have a rebuttal on this one. Rick?
Collaboration and a commitment to a more equitable future.
Great. And lastly, Brian?
Yeah, we think a lot about how stronger and great technology supports fair and more equity, and how, if we are more equitable in how we think about building out technology, and we build for not just the 1%, and we build products that are not just created by the 1%, then we're going to be a lot stronger. So that mutually reinforcing dichotomy is, I think, what we think a lot about at EDA, and what I'm hearing a lot about from this panel. So I'm really excited.
Likewise. I want to thank you all for being here today. Catherine, Brian, Rick, Chris, and Kathy, who unfortunately had to jump a little bit earlier. Really interesting conversation. And I mean it. A lot of people who know me, I didn't get involved in the New Jersey ecosystem because I have some dying love of New Jersey. I happen to like New Jersey. But I look for where we can have a strategic business advantage. And this is an industry where we now have that. And it's with the collaboration support of the EDA and PSEG and the variety of stakeholders needed to make this happen. That's very, very different in other industries. I've had consumer tech businesses before, and this is a very different game. So if you're not checking out New Jersey in this industry, give us a call. Call Brian, call me, call Rick, call Chris. Maybe Catherine will write you a check. Stick around. We've got a great day coming. We still have the Clean Tech Challenge, where we're going to hear from the CEO of PSEG, Ralph Izzo, from former presidential candidate Andrew Yang. We're going to give away 50 grand. It's going to be awesome. Thanks again to this panel for being here. We'll do one more high five. 1, 2, 3. Boom. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks.